Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And today we want to take a look at a couple of offensive playmakers. In fact, we're going to rank 6 offensive playmakers from Saquon to Kenny to Wan'Dale to Kadarius to Sterling Shepard to Darius Slayton. A lot of different styles of players here, but we want to take a look at who has the most impact. We'll take a look at the health, the variables that have impacted some of these individual players, the weaknesses, the strengths, and why we have them ranked in the order that we do. Anthony and I have a couple of differing players. Before we dive into this interesting list, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. I think the Giants offense is one that could maybe surprise some people this year. I think if everybody stays healthy, there is a good amount of talent in the playmaking department. I think if Brian Dable and Mike Kafka can combine really well to create a decent scheme for Daniel Jones, you can maybe maximize his potential. And of course, there's been significant improvements across the offensive line. So I think this is a unit that could surprise some people, but it's going to be interesting as we dive into these playmakers. The main discussion with 90% of these guys that we're going to mention is health. It's really nothing if the Giants aren't healthy this season. You know that the offense is going to be bad if they are not healthy. So there's going to be a few guys here. It's kind of like when we take a look at the list of players that we're talking about, you could rank them healthy and then you could rank them with like no health involved. Just like take it out of the equation. It's a different list than if you're taking health into account. So it's kind of difficult to really rank these players and say where they rank on top of each other, considering the confounding variables with their health. But hopefully everybody stays healthy this year. And if they do, my list is going to look a lot different than it will if I take health into account.
Yeah, I also think there are some players that could rise on this list, not even aside from health, or rather aside from health. I think that if they play well enough, and some of the factors that won't impact others, don't make a negative impact on them, they could see a elevation. I'll kind of explain one player I have in mind when we get to him. But right off the bat, I think you and I have the same first spot. I think it has to be Saquon Barkley. We've seen Saquon at his best, right? Like we saw flashes of Kadarius Toney last year. We know what some of these guys are capable of, but we've seen Saquon Barkley run for over 2,000 all-purpose yards, 15 total touchdowns, win an Offensive Rookie Player of the Year, and a Pro Bowler, right? He has that capability. He's 21 years old when he did it back in 2018. Last year, he only ran for 593 yards. Only had 41 receptions for 263 yards, had 2 fumbles, more than his previous 3 years combined. So he kind of struggled. But again, like his style is interesting because when he's not involved in the running game, he really is reliant on a good offensive line. A bad offensive line, every now and then he'll break one away. He'll go for 50 yards, 60 yards and take it to the house or whatever it might be. But when the offensive line is bad, he gets stopped in the backfield like on 70% of his runs. And that's the biggest con when it comes to Saquon Barkley. He's a boomer bust running back, but we also think he's a better receiver than people give him credit for. And I hope that Mike Kafka and Brian Dable get him more involved in that. We spoke about this a couple days ago. Saquon Barkley, 91 receptions during his rookie season. He's barely breached that over the last 3 years combined. He had 721 yards, and he just barely has breached that with the last 3 years combined as well. So his first year has essentially produced more than the last 3 years. And that's where, we know his benchmark. We know what his level of quality is when he's healthy, but he hasn't been. The offensive line has been so bad. He hasn't been able to even put together a competent season. Really. I mean, the year after his 2018 season wasn't bad. He was dealing with some ankle injuries, but those injuries have just compiled. His right leg has been just absolutely decimated. So if he's able to put together a good year, if the offensive line plays above average football, or at least average in run blocking, I think we're going to see his best self once again, which is why I have him in the number 1 spot.
Yeah, we should see his best self once again if he's healthy, considering the fact that we made major improvements on the offensive line, especially at the right tackle and right guard positions. Got some big run blocking maulers in those 2 positions, right? Both of them excel in run blocking. So just right there, you take a look at Saquon Barkley and what he's had on the right side in the past with guys like Nate Solder, Will Hernandez, not very good there. So you kind of needed those big maulers to be the run blockers there. And now Saquon has that. So that could lead to a big boost in his production right there. And then also taking a look at the offense that they're building, where he's going to get more involved in the receiving game for sure, because you have some really creative minds in Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. And when you take a look at Saquon Barkley and you compare his first season to every season after, as I mentioned, health is a really important factor with multiple guys on this list, but maybe none more important than Saquon Barkley. If he stays healthy, we know that he can be the best running back in the NFL. Coming out of college, some people thought that he was the greatest running back prospect to ever come out of college. And that's, in the conversation with guys like Ricky Williams and Reggie Bush. He was in that conversation. Those guys were studs coming out of college, and so was Saquon Barkley. And so far, it's been squandered talent, wasted opportunities, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that he just can't stay healthy. But if you take a look at his rookie season, it was historic. Over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 2,028. He led the NFL in yards from scrimmage as a rookie, which is historical in its own right. He was the offensive rookie of the year. He set a record for most receptions in a rookie season for a Giants player. That includes Odell Beckham Jr. as a rookie, who had 89 receptions. Saquon Barkley had 91 as a running back. Does that not blow your mind? That's insane. And that's why he was so good as a rookie, because he was so heavily involved in the passing attack. And then he's taken a step back. Of course, injuries have kind of dampened his role in general, but he's really taken a step back from the receiving game, not due to his own fault, but because of the coaches that have been placed into his life and into his NFL career. And it's kind of really just held him back as a player in general. And one other crazy stat that I want to take a look at is in 2018, according to Pro Football Focus, he forced 40 missed tackles on 261 attempts. In 2019, 217 attempts, so nearly 50 less attempts, 42 missed tackles forced in that season. So across his first two seasons, 82 missed tackles. Then you look at 2021, where he had 162 attempts and he only forced 20 missed tackles. So you're seeing a drop off in talent. And, it could just be because he's not fully healthy and he's dealing with those injuries and he's not at 100%, but he's not the same player that he was his rookie season. In my opinion, when healthy, he's still the best playmaker on this offense. You could argue that he's not even the most valuable because of the position that he plays. But when he's catching 91 passes in a rookie season, he is pretty valuable because he's basically a receiver and he's basically a top running back in the NFL as well. So in order to maximize the value of Saquon Barkley, A, yes, he needs to stay healthy so he can be the talented player that he is. But B, you have to get him more involved in the receiving game to maximize his potential and value. And then you can watch him dominate the NFL.
Yep, 100% agreed. I think that if he's healthy, we're going to see him back to full strength. And like you said, those maulers, those people movers on the right side of the line with Evan Neal and Mark Lewinsky. You still got Andrew Thomas on the left side and John Feliciano, who's a bulldog. You want to run behind those guys. They love to run to the right side of the field. And Evan Neal's going to move people, right? That is what he's good at. He's a physical specimen. His strength is run blocking. Just let him and Daniel Bellinger just get out to the second level and just hold it down and let Saquon Barkley find his hole and take advantage of it. And I think that's where we're going to see Saquon really rejuvenate his career here. But the second guy on the list, I personally have Kadarius Toney over Kenny Golladay because of the style of offense that I think the Giants are going to run next season. You look at Patrick Mahomes and Mike Kafka's, with the Chiefs. You look at Josh Allen and Brian Dable. They really focus on short screen passes and short routes concepts, West Coast a little bit. Brian Dable loves his spread offense, and the Chiefs use the West Coast style. But I do think that Kadarius Toney is going to be such a great option for them in the screen game, along with Wan'Dale Robinson. Patrick Mahomes, I think, had 169 screen passes or passes that were behind the line of scrimmage last year. And then you look at Josh Allen at 100 and Daniel Jones at 49. So I think that when you're looking at a guy like Kadarius Toney, he's going to make his money behind the line of scrimmage, get blockers out in front. And I think that him in the open field is, I would even say that he's more lethal in the open field than Saquon Barkley at this point, with his quick twitch abilities. And when they're both healthy, I think he's the better option in the open field. But I think Saquon's the stronger player, just because he is a running back and he's probably got like 50, 60 pounds on him. But Kadarius Toney, I think, could end up becoming the wide receiver one if he stays healthy over Kenny Golladay, simply because of the offense the Giants are going to play. But again, health is the big variable here. Their entire group is injury prone. Saquon, Kadarius Toney's headed down that path. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, all of them have dealt with so many injuries. Wan'Dale's the only one who, knock on wood, hasn't been really injured during his collegiate career. Hopefully he maintains that pace. But I think Kadarius Toney, 420 yards during his rookie season, didn't really play that much to begin with. He played in 10 games, 4 starts, hauled in 39 passes for almost a 70% catch rate. Overall, I think that he showed us what he's capable of doing, and that is superstar status when he's healthy and he's given the ball and given him the freedom to make plays. He can even throw the ball downfield. We saw him do that a couple of times. So I have Kadarius Toney at number 2. I believe you have Kenny Golladay there. I'd like to hear your opinion on that one.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give my opinion on two players at once here. I'll just go in one go because I do have a different number two than you do. In my opinion, when fully healthy, Kenny Golladay is the better player than Kadarius Toney right now. Now, I don't think that's permanent. I think Kadarius Toney has limitless potential. Everything that he provides as a receiver, as a rusher as well on those, backwards handoffs and jet sweeps, all that kind of stuff. And then the screen game and just his ability to make people miss. It's unparalleled. It's like rookie Saquon Barkley level, right? How we just talked about him forcing over 40 missed tackles in his first two seasons. Well, Kadarius Toney has that same ability to just make everybody miss. He's like, you can't tackle him in a phone booth, that kind of guy. And if the Giants really get him involved and if he stays healthy, which is super important, you have to factor that in there. But if he's able to stay healthy, I mean, in this offense with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka and the way that we've seen them use guys in the screen game and the run after the catch ability that some of the players in their offensive systems in the past have had, Kadarius Toney could reach a new level of production this year. He could just boom out of nowhere, but he could also bust because of his health and his injury history. That's a serious concern, and it goes the same for number two on my list of playmakers, Kenny Golladay. He could boom or he could bust. But for me, I'm just going to go with him as a number two player because look at what he's already established as in the NFL. In 2019, he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns, right? So you have to keep that in mind. He's been one of the most productive players in the NFL at his position in the past. It's just about staying healthy and getting back to that. He was a Pro Bowler 2019, 11 receiving touchdowns, led the NFL. And if you take a look at his deep receiving stats, it's unbelievable. Kenny Golladay has the second highest contested catch rate in the NFL since 2018, according to PFF, going into last season. So this is not including the wash of a 2021 season that he had. But if you take a look at it, going into that year, he ranked fourth among NFL wide receivers in deep receiving yards over the previous three seasons, just 9 yards behind third place, despite playing only 5 games in 2020. Again, injury history has always been there, and injuries have always followed him. But he's been the top deep receiving wide receiver, or at least in the top 5 for the majority of his career. 628 yards on deep passes, ranked second in the league in 2019. Third highest graded passer on deep balls in 2020 was Daniel Jones. This looked like a perfect marriage. Unfortunately, it didn't shape out that way, and it's strictly due to injuries. But when you take a look at Kenny Galladay's career history, he is one of the best deep ball receivers in the NFL. He is elite in that category, and when he's healthy and you can maximize his talent, and I believe that Brian Dable can, yes, he is arguably the best player on the Giants offense if he's healthy and if he's up to his full potential. And I do think that he's the best receiver that the Giants have right now. It's really just all about staying healthy, not only for him, but Kadarius Toney as well. Limitless potential for both of those players. They just got to stay healthy.
And they also got to get in the ball more, right? They got to get in the ball more in the right ways because they did not really utilize him correctly last year by any means. He had 76 targets. He had 2020, only played 5 games, though. He had 65 receptions, 116 targets in 2019 during his Pro Bowl season. But the most embarrassing thing to me is that he didn't score a touchdown pass last year. His catch rate was 48.7%, the lowest in his career by 10%. So you're looking at like legitimately like a player that isn't even remotely close to what he was when he was with Detroit. And I'm hoping that he can return to his normal self. They get him more involved, target downfield, expose men coverage with him. Because he has such a huge catch radius. He's 6'4". So when you have a guy with that kind of catch radius, just have Daniel Jones throw it in his vicinity. He'll make the play if he's open. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. Like, he's not going to generate a ton of separation. Like, the separation statistic is not a good one to use when you're talking about Kenny Golladay, because when he extends his arms out, he's got an extra 2-3 feet there, maybe even an extra yard. So like that in general, in my opinion, kind of erases that argument some people make that he's not a guy that's going to create a lot of separation, because he does create a lot of separation. You just have to give him the chance to actually reach the football away from the defender. So I do think that he will bounce back. I do think he'll have a good season, but I think that if Kadarius Toney is healthy, he's going to be the guy the Giants are forcing the ball to and really feeding. But Kenny Golladay, he's going to pop up, right? He's going to pop up on those nice crossers, on those dagger routes. He's going to pop up down the field when Dan Jones needs to make a play early, maybe on play action if the running game's doing well, taking a shot downfield. You're going to see him pop up, and he's going to make some plays. But, ultimately, I think that the way the Giants offense is going to run, they want speed. Kafka, Dable, they love speed. I see, Gabriel Davis is become more of a physical guy with Buffalo. He has some top end speed. I think that you look how they use even Stephon Diggs, fast guy, Tyreek Hill, fast guy. McCole Hardman, fast. I think that they're going to appreciate speed more than those big possession receivers moving forward, which is why that I think Kadarius Toney and his quickness and speed is going to be more lethal than Kenny Golladay moving forward. So I do have Kenny Golladay in that 3 spot. In the 4 spot, however, this is another debate that we need to have, because I have Wan'Dale Robinson in the 4 spot, and you have Sterling Shepard. So there's an injury debate to be had there, and there is just a more or less an experience question, because Wan'Dale obviously is not experienced, but Sterling Shepard has plenty. The problem is he's coming off a torn Achilles. So, like, how much value does he have? But Anthony, what are you thinking about that 4 spot? Why do you think Sterling Shepard deserves it?
For me, as you mentioned, it is about the experience. I think that in the past, Sterling Shepard has been a top slot receiver in the NFL, top 10 at the very least. He's very good from the slot. He's very dependable when he's on the field. Of course, it's all about health with these guys. When he's healthy, though, he's super dependable. He doesn't drop passes. He creates a bunch of separation. He knows how to find pockets and zones and make some plays. And he's also got some great run after the catch ability. And he's a great run blocker. He's got a complete skill set, and he doesn't only play in the slot. He also plays from the Z position on the outside. So you look at Sterling Shepard's skill set, it's extremely well-rounded. He can do everything. In my opinion, the reason why I have him ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson is he is not a gadget player. He is an all-around complete wide receiver, slot receiver who can excel in the slot. And I really project that in this new offensive scheme, he will excel if he stays healthy. He's the veteran in the locker room. He's been with the Giants for longer than any other player on this roster. I think he's a great player when he's healthy. And if you even take a look all the way back at his rookie season, he had a lot of touchdowns that year playing alongside a true number 1 wide receiver in Odell Beckham Jr. If the Giants are able to maximize the potentials of Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney, and then you're talking about Sterling Shepard being your number 3 receiver, he could really sneak up on you and score a lot of touchdowns and gain a lot of yardage from that slot receiver position. It's very realistic to me that he has a huge bounce back season. I know he dealt with a devastating injury in the Achilles tear, but nobody's tougher than young Shep. I think that he's going to bounce back, and I think that especially in this offense, he's due for a really big comeback season.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen guys return from those Achilles injuries before. Like Cam Akers just came back in like 6 months from the Achilles tear and ended up making an impact down the stretch. But I do think that you can't really rely on him anymore, right? He suffered that Achilles tear, but then early in the season, he also had the groin injury that he missed a couple games. He only played 7 games last season. He hasn't played 16 games since 2018. That was his best year. Since then, it's just been getting a little bit less: 10 games, 12 games, 7 games. So that's interesting. I definitely think like you're right, he could have a big comeback season, but I wouldn't bet my money on it. I would probably be more willing to bet that Wan'Dale Robinson actually ends up with more yards and probably more touchdowns than him, just because he's not just a receiver, right? Wan'Dale can also be used as a kind of extension of the running game, the jet sweeps, the end arounds, the gadgetry. And I think that value there is going to be extremely productive for the Giants on offense. They're going to be trying to get the ball to Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale in those facets. So I think his impact will be better. But in terms of pure receiver skills, right now, I do agree. I think Sterling Shepard is the better player, but I think Wan'Dale is going to be the more productive player.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to a more well-rounded skill set between Sterling Shepard and Wan'Dale Robinson. For me, Wan'Dale Robinson, rookie season, he's going to just be a gadget player. I think they do get him involved a lot in the running game, receiving game with the screen passes, but you're going to see Sterling Shepard, in my opinion, involved a whole lot more downfield, 20 yards downfield, 10 yards downfield in the red zone. I think that he's just more valuable on a down-to-down basis rather than a gadget player like Wan'Dale Robinson. And again, I really like Wan'Dale Robinson, but I would maybe even debate taking the next guy on our list and putting him ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson, because I think Darius Slayton is a far more established player who has a lot more of a well-rounded skill set as a wide receiver than does Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson has a lot of work to do as a receiver. He's got a very limited catch radius as well, with the shortest arms in the NFL. It's kind of tough to project that he's going to have a bunch of production in his rookie season. I think he's going to need a year or two to really settle into the NFL game, get some mass on his frame, and get more involved in less of a gadget role, be a more complete player. For me, I'm taking a look at Darius Slayton. I'm taking a look at Sterling Shepard. I'm seeing some very complete, well-rounded skill sets. I mean, maybe not as much so with Darius Slayton, but when you take a look at what Sterling Shepard does, outside, inside, blocking, receiving, he does it all. In my opinion, he is the clear-cut better player of the other 2 players that I just mentioned. But I think we could even have a debate right now about who's better between Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wan'Dale's better than Darius Slayton personally because looking at Robinson, Slayton, the guy had an 18, almost a 20% drop rate last year, and Wan'Dale, he dropped 7 passes, which is actually quite a lot, but he also had a ton of targets, 6.3% drop rate. Dropped 7 passes on 140 targets. So I'm not gonna blame him for dropping 7 passes over that. That's an insane number of targets. For comparison's sake, let's see, Darius Slayton. I don't even think he even got close to that. I mean, let's see. He had last season
58
58
targets. Yeah.
targets. So he had a third, like a little bit less, a little bit more than a third of the targets that Wan'Dale had last year. But you did mention that Wan'Dale has the shortest arms. I would counter saying that he also ranks 6th in deep catches and 12th in deep yards last year. So they did use him downfield and he did make a lot of plays. We just saw a recent play from him in practice where he beat Aaron Robinson in man coverage downfield. So I wouldn't say like he's just going to be a screen catcher. I'd say I think you could use him in a lot of different ways. And I think the Giants are going to try to do that. I mean, this is the time to do it, right? Like this is the rebuild year. This is the first year of like the full rebuild. You have a lot of young players, a lot of young talent. Give them the ball, right? Like take shots downfield. Let's test them. Let's see if Daniel Jones can put the ball where it needs to be for them to make plays. Wan'Dale doesn't have the biggest frame. He doesn't have the biggest hands, but he does have good body control. And when he, like you said, we'd like to add a little bit more mass to his frame. I mean, the guy put up like 20 freaking bench press reps of 220, of 225. Like he is a strong son of a gun, right? Like his dad's a bodybuilder. I think he followed me on Twitter the other day. The kid is absolutely ripped. He is strong as hell, very underrated in that facet, but he is inexperienced. He is a smaller guy. We'll see how NFL defensive backs kind of tailor their approach to him. I do think he's better right now or he's going to be more productive than Sterling Shepard just because of the ways and that the Giants are going to use him as this gadget style player, but also as a receiver. But Darius Slayton's my last on the mark just because he's gotten worse every single year. He started with 740 yards and 8 touchdowns. He went to 750 yards and 3 touchdowns. And last season, 339 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's dropped the ball more consistently over the last 3 years, a 44.8% catch rate. Altogether, you're looking at him. He just is not carrying his weight aside from being a speedster. And even then, he had a couple drops last year. Everyone remembers the deep ball that Daniel Jones threw. And he dropped that pass I think it was against Washington. And you can't do that, man. Like if that ball hits your hands, you got to haul that in, man. You're making $2-3 million a year. The Giants could still cut him and save $2 million. I don't think they will, but it's possible they could. But Darius Slayton, the drops, the inconsistencies, the limited route tree. I think for him, he's the number 6 playmaker on my list. But that doesn't mean he's not going to make an impact, and he probably will make some nice catches this year, going deep. And he is the guy that's going to blow off the top of the defense. So I do think that with Darius Slayton, like you're hoping that he does just that. If he doesn't impact the game on the deep routes, he's basically a non-factor.
I mean, that's completely fair, valid. He has kind of gotten worse every single year. And honestly, if we're ranking them based on potential, Wan'Dale Robinson is much higher on the list than I'm putting him. But I do think it's a tighter debate than you're making it out to be between the talents of Wan'Dale Robinson as a rookie, not his potential, but what he is right now as a very raw player that the Giants just drafted in the
I
second
still think
round
he's a better route
versus
runner.
a veteran receiver in Darius Slayton, who's shown to have great production as a deep threat for Daniel Jones in the past. You also have to keep in mind he has a lot of great chemistry with Daniel Jones. He is Daniel Jones's favorite target. Whether he is always up to the task of making the deep catch or if he's going to drop it, you can debate that. But him and Daniel Jones do have great chemistry. And so I think that's ultimately going to lead to more production out of Darius Slayton in this upcoming 2022 season than you'll see from Wan'Dale Robinson, just because there's a connection there already. It's already trust and a timing on those routes. It's all there already between Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton. But I mean, there's no debate. Wan'Dale Robinson has an immense amount of potential. As you mentioned, he is very strong, even though he's got that size. You can also argue, though, the really short arms are what helped him get those bench reps up, because having shorter arms helps you with a bench press. But he is very talented. He can be used in a variety of ways, as you mentioned, but I don't think he necessarily will be as a rookie. I don't think they're going to be using him a whole lot as that deep guy, because I think they're more established deep receivers right now are A, Kenny Golladay, B, Darius Slayton, and C, Kadarius Toney. Those are your deep threats right now in that order, in my opinion. And then your underneath guys are A, Sterling Shepard, B, Kadarius Toney. I think that's the order for those two right there. And then C, Wan'Dale Robinson. So I think it's really hard to see an avenue where he does put up a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards, and it is very productive in his rookie season. I think, you look ahead to 2023 when there's a good chance that Kenny Golladay isn't even on this roster, and there's a really good chance that Sterling Shepard isn't even on this roster, and Darius Slayton. Well, then you're talking about as a long-term plan, yeah, they're going to need to develop Wan'Dale because he might end up with a very large role in this offense in 2023. But 2022, right now, the way that I'm ranking them, I'm actually going to go ahead and put Wan'Dale Robinson dead last, and I'm going to put Darius Slayton ahead of him.
Interesting. I'm very interested to see what you guys think in the YouTube comments. Do you think Wan'Dale should be above Sterling Shepard, above Darius Slayton? A lot of different arguments to be made here about these players, but love to hear yours as always below. Really, really fun, interesting ranking system here. So hopefully these guys will end up becoming great. Hopefully they will end up becoming productive impact players for this team moving forward with a better scheme. And hopefully Daniel Jones can take the step forward to help them get there. And the offensive line obviously is the catalyst behind it all. We've seen a lot of inconsistencies, but we have faith. We know these guys have talent. It's just about extrapolating on it and building a system that really focuses in on allowing them to put it on the field. But again, love to hear your comments below, opinions, your list of ranking these different playmakers. Make sure to like and subscribe as always on the YouTube channel and Spotify and Apple. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.